You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Pat Scott. Hey, Pat.
Hi, greetings.
And Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hey, Father Andrew.
Howdy.
Welcome back. It's been a bit.
It sure has. Yeah, it's good to be back.
Awesome. It's good to have you. Folks, before we get into today's show, I want to tell you about another show on the network you are sure to enjoy called, I can say my words, Raising the Bets. That's right. It's a show that I do with my wife, Melanie. And if you're going to check it out, you can find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. All right. So before we get into our main topics today, I want to do another one of my Dom's Tales of Woe. I need a stinger for this. I need to, something like a clip. Anyway, so we recently had in my house, our air conditioning went out, which, was great timing because we had a heat wave in Boston. And it was weird because it would go out, it would stop working. The compressor we had central air. The compressor was working, but it wasn't blowing. We'd turn off the stuff at the circuit breaker, wait a few hours, come back, it would work again, so on and so forth. And we ended up having the technicians come out 3 times to fix things, which, which is great. The second tech came in and he said, oh, it's definitely the thermostat. And we have a Nest thermostat. When I bypass the thermostat and just put the wires together, it runs. But if I, put the thermostat in the line, it doesn't. So I had to run out to Home Depot and, buy a new Nest thermostat, and he wired it up and everything was working for about 4 hours. And like he was convinced, like it's the technology. Oh, all this technology. And he was kind of like, oh, technology to this, all this not things. Well, long story short, it turns out it was the blower motor, which I kept telling these guys, each successive one that showed up, that I think it's the blower motor. But no, it's the high tech component that you've put in here. And I tell you all this just to say, sometimes it's not the high tech thing. Like the high tech thing is probably the most complicated part of the HVAC system in my house. The thermostat. It's the most technical. And sometimes it's tempting to say, well, if something goes wrong, it's the most technical thing. But the fact is sometimes it's the simplest thing. It's a mower. I mean, it was a blower motor that is, the technology is about 100 years old. So.
Oh, and so many times I find it's a cable that's frayed or gone bad, or you can't see anything wrong with it. And it's, right. It's a simple thing. It's the simple things oftentimes.
So, So our AC has been working for over a week now.
Yay.
$1,000 later of repairs, including $400 of tech hourly labor that was useless. Right. So I'm talking to the company now to see if they can give me a break on any of that. But in any case, just a word to. I'm not warning so much, but just remember, sometimes it's the simple things that have gone wrong.
That's all you have to do is turn it off and turn it back on.
Yes.
But it's your AC, but sometimes your computer, for example.
Yeah. Sometimes
we had a sprinkler system that's all we had to do was unplug it, wait about 20, 30 seconds and plug it back in. Yep. It was the electronics in there.
Yep. I mean, in that case, it was the electronic bit, but sometimes it's a valve or a broken plug or that sort of thing. Yeah. In any case, let's talk about our first segment, our first headlines of the day, which is there was an announcement recently by Elon Musk at Starlink and in combination with T-Mobile, the phone carrier. T-Mobile, you might know, is the smallest of the major phone carriers in the United States. It's smaller than AT&T and Verizon, and its coverage area is a little bit less. And that's always been a problem for them in acquiring customers. Well, they've had this announcement that they did with Starlink, which is that they're going to the best way to put it, starting next year, they'll be able to provide, Starlink will provide coverage in areas where T-Mobile doesn't already have ground-based coverage for basic use, like telephone and texting and some basic stuff like that. So what that means is when you are in a place that where you have a dead zone, essentially now, you can at least have emergency service. So it will only work in areas where terrestrial coverage doesn't exist now. And the biggest thing is it will work with your existing phones. You don't need special tech. The satellites will be transmitting on the T-Mobile frequencies throughout the U.S. So I think it's very interesting. What do y'all think of this?
Oh, I think it'll be a great advantage for those places like Montana or Wyoming or up in the Yosemite, up in the top of the park. You know, those things where you forget that you don't have internet.
Right.
That was exactly what I was thinking of. I did once, and I'll never do it again. Not because it was a bad experience, but because I'm just not a backpacker. But I backpacked into the Wind River Mountains for 4 nights and 3 days, and I mean, it was gorgeous. It was beautiful, but there's no cell service up there at all. And of course you're going to get away from it all. So
right.
I don't want to say I wanted to like make phone calls up there, but there's always that lingering kind of what if something goes wrong.
Exactly.
And I know a lot of people use like GPS or satellite phones or something, but if you don't have to carry one of those and you can just carry your normal phone, right. That sounds like a total positive to me, especially for those emergency situations.
Yeah, and sat phone plans can be expensive and not out of the reach of a lot of regular folk. I mean, I know for our own Father Corey, who is in Montana, a lot of his missions from his parish are in remote places. He talks about driving for hours on dirt roads into the nowhere. Then and he's out of range of stuff. So this would be probably a good thing for him. I know he already has Starlink at his home, but if he had T-Mobile phone service, he could potentially, be in touch with people. So that's really neat. But some of the obstacles they face is that it is extremely low bandwidth. So it's only voice and texting at this point.
And does it mean that it's only if you're a T-Mobile subscriber, or will they open those to other people, but maybe have a roaming charge or something for?
No, I think it's T-Mobile only. Like you're going to have a plan. There's nothing to keep Starlink from negotiating with other carriers.
Right.
You'd think that's exactly what they would do.
Right.
And they probably will. It's just that they get a lot of fame and notoriety from being the first one to do it. So,
well, and also because they have extremely limited bandwidth, I think they said 200 to 300 megabits per cell area. They can't handle a lot more traffic. I mean, it would be overwhelmed quickly. So they probably went with T-Mobile because T-Mobile has the smallest terrestrial coverage and also fewer subscribers. And so it's less likely to overwhelm their network. But I think it kind of points to the future, doesn't it? Because Elon Musk said that Tesla will eventually use this for their in-car connectivity, internet connectivity. Like they use AT&T now, I think. But I could see where they would want to, have their own in-house system. And for that, they're going to need tons more bandwidth. So I imagine they're planning to grow.
And this seems like just a great opportunity for them to play with the technology and see what goes wrong and see what goes right, and then develop and improve on the current system.
Right. Exactly. This is a test case. They'll see how it goes and where the problems are. I mean, they kind of have done that with Starlink, which they've been expanding. And in fact, I saw on the news that they recently came out with a maritime product of Starlink, so they can put on ships, and it's really expensive. It's like $10,000 a month. This is not to put on your fishing boat that you're taking out.
But maybe on one of those Princess cruises.
Well, it's in fact exactly what it is. One of the big ones, Royal Caribbean, I think it was, said that they're putting it, that's what they're going to use for internet connectivity on board in the future. And that's probably a good thing because I've never been on a cruise, but from people who have, I've heard it's really weak.
It's slow.
Weak and very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, think of it. I've like if you're on an airplane and you purchase internet from that, it's not entirely the same, but you pay like a daily fee for it.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Yeah. It's good to kind of check email or whatever, but you're not going to sit there and Netflix. And of course, if you're on a cruise, why would you be doing that anyway? You should be out.
Yeah, although
shuffleboarding,
right?
I mean, if I'm on a cruise right. and there's a new like Star Wars series on, I might want to like watch that. But other than that, yeah. So the other thing that is kind of interesting to me is just where does this kind of point to? Where are we going with our regular phone services? In fact, are we going to? There was some talk last year that Apple might be coming out within their new iPhone when the 13 was coming, might have satellite connectivity in it, which would use the more traditional satellite frequencies. So it wouldn't be the terrestrial, like the T-Mobile frequencies that they're using that already exist, but the satellite ones, and use special satellites for that, which would also be interesting. But it kind of that makes me think that maybe we're looking to a future where we don't use cell towers, where everything will be satellite based. Do you think that's a realistic proposition? That would give us worldwide coverage.
Maybe as an alternative, but for high speed streaming, I don't think it's going to be a solution for a long time yet.
Yeah, that's a lot of bandwidth to pump up and down. I mean, they do a lot of bandwidth point to point, like a lot of, all these satellite TV stuff is point to point. They broadcast from Hollywood to, New York to the network affiliates, that sort of thing. But this is like would be one to many. They would have to be broadcasting to many. Yeah, it wouldn't
be just a single broadcast of that show to another point. Yeah, it would be a lot.
Right. Kind of interesting. I mean, they're kind of doing it with the Starlink, the way they're doing it with the home based,
but it's still one of many options.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this would just be the same thing, because then you still get the competition between the different companies, and TNT can still develop faster and faster cell networks.
Yeah. I like the idea of getting rid of all the towers and the dead zones. And as long as you have, a clear shot to the sky. I mean, satellite doesn't work great if you're in a building, I suppose, but a lot of times
have to be down to the top of the building and then spread from there.
Right.
It would be nice to get rid of those fake trees that you see out there with
and saguaros and stuff, depending on where you are.
Although a lot of churches are making money off of the cell antennas in their steeples. Yes. So
we have one out at our Lakeway. Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, I think it's an interesting idea, an interesting proposition that they're working on. So we'll see how it develops. It'll be curious to see. I mean, it wasn't really even a product announcement. They just kind of announced the intent to do a thing in the future. So we'll see whether even the promise of even rolls out. So it'd be worth watching. All right, let's take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including Treese G, Shasidi E, Chris K, Walter G, and Daniel W. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. This is Dom Bettinelli, CEO of StarQuest. I need to ask for your help, but first I want to thank you for listening to StarQuest and supporting our mission of exploring the intersection of faith and pop culture. We've added 9 new shows since 2019, including, most recently, The Secrets of Middle-earth, just in time for the new Amazon streaming series. And we have plans to add even more, but the network needs additional resources. We need to bring on more audio editors, video editors, and production equipment, including video equipment for Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World and new shows shows we have in the planning stages. If you value this show and the other great shows on StarQuest, we need to hear from you now. If you're not yet one of our monthly patrons, please become one. And if you're already a patron, please consider increasing your monthly donation. There are many special patron benefits we'd like to give you, and you can learn more about them by going to sqpn.com/give and clicking Become a Patron. Your support at this time is crucial, so please go to sqpn.com/give today. That's sqpn.com/give. So our next headline is this interesting story, which says what 21 billion's Facebook friendships say about the economic ladder in the U.S. So we all know Meta, formerly Facebook, has lots and lots of information about all of us who have willingly entered into their service. That I didn't mean it to sound like that, but yeah, that's kind of what we've done, is entered into service to Facebook. And what they've done is they pulled a lot of the data for what they looked at. I'm just trying to think of the exact segment. Facebook users in the United States between the ages of 25 and 44 who had used the platform in the past 30 days, who had at least 100 friends on the platform, and had connected their account to their zip code. That makes 72 million people, which is about 80% of the U.S. population in that age bracket. So they have a lot of really good data. And then they used it to measure the socioeconomic status of users based on things like location, education levels, relationship status, and language, and then compared the individual's economic status based on their Facebook friends. And they found there's a couple of interesting findings in the studies. So one is that people who grow up in areas where there are more friendships between high and low income people are more likely to move out of poverty and up the economic ladder. They also found that there are many places that don't allow for much interaction between high and low income people. And even when a neighborhood does allow for that interaction, people are still more likely to befriend people in similar economic brackets, which I don't necessarily think is surprising at all. I have some questions about some of this data and information, but what do you think about this in general, this study?
Well, how would they know somebody had moved out of poverty based upon 1 year's worth of sampling of people in a fairly narrow age group?
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't, it might stay where they are now, but to say moving them out of poverty, that seems like a, multi-year process to try to track somebody.
Right. Well, and I think there's also some question about how they're measuring people's economic status based on
self-reported. Could be possibly overinflated if somebody said my income level for this household is X.
Well, they didn't ask anybody anything. This is all gleaned from profiles. So like it said, the article says they based it on things like location, education level, relationship status, and language, which seems to me to be a little like just because someone has a degree or, went to college or is married or speaks English, does that necessarily mean that they're at a high income level? Or that they live in a because you can go to the Facebook's website and dig into this data for your zip code. And I looked at my town. My town is a decidedly blue collar town. It is, and they make us look like we're like high income. It's like, and how do you measure like the friendships? It seems kind of sketchy, the whole question. I'm no social scientist, so I would need to have someone who could dig into the actual studies and pull out of it the actual, how they did this and what the results were. But because oftentimes, one of the things I want to point out is oftentimes articles about studies are oversimplistic and draw conclusions based on a surface reading of the abstract of the study or a press release written by somebody involved with the institution that sponsored the study or something along those lines.
Well, and measuring friendships too. I mean, I'm a member of several groups that, like the Oculus group or different things like that. That there's lots of different economic, everything from truck drivers to plumbers to nannies. But just because we're connected that way doesn't necessarily mean that we're, quote, friends that are in affluent, surroundings, et cetera. That's a real poor measure.
I don't think anybody out there, I mean, you might have 100 acquaintances, but those are actual, like, your friends.
Yeah.
I have hundreds of friends on Facebook. But often it's like, a parishioner knows me and,
right.
The ladies in the choir and but I've never interacted with them outside of mass or something.
Yeah. Even if you just limit it to people who live within your geographic locale, your town, your zip code, the people that you are Facebook friends with. I'm Facebook friends with people who live in my town, but only because we need to, interact with, scouts or, various community organizations. We're not actually friends, like beyond.
Well, even if they're using that Facebook definition of friend as being just a connection, not really a friend, then it still doesn't make any sense. Just because I have this connection, why would that influence my economic status and move me from poverty to middle income?
Yeah.
I don't think that this study is going to be proven to be that valuable.
Right. Well, and then the article that references this on The Verge kind of also brings up the fact that Facebook has this data for good program in which they're trying to show, like, look, we have all this data on people, but we're using it for good, not for evil money-making purposes. But the fact is all the information that they're putting out there isn't about how Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp are influencing people, how their own platform affects us. It's all very external focused. So, you don't have much data on how Facebook is affecting people. It's more abstracted from that. So I know Facebook, I like to use it as kind of a whipping boy on this program, but it just, there's a lot of information there, and it could be good to if you could use it in a good way. Let me put it that way. There might be ways to use all this data to find out interesting things that help us make a better society. I'm not sure that any of this is all that interesting or helpful.
They haven't really proven that that's what they're using it for, though.
Right. Exactly. They have not. They have to prove that this is how they're using it. And even then, I'm not sure it justifies them acquiring and collecting all this data in all the other ways.
We voluntarily gave it to them.
Yeah. We did. Then, not to mention all the other ways they're probably using it. So it's, again, another that bears watching. So let's talk about our next headline. This one is kind of surprised me. I didn't realize this sort of thing would be happening right now. But from Gizmodo, the headline is "Too many servers could mean no new homes in parts of the UK." Basically, what's happening is there are so many data centers that have been built in this particular part of London, in this area of London, that they're taking up too much electricity, and there's not enough electricity left to power any new development in a city, London, which is desperately in need of new housing. They have a housing crisis in London. They need to build so many more units, and it's an interesting thing to think about because all of this stuff that we have on the internet, all your connections, all of the cloud has to exist on computers in many places, not in just one place, but, in England and in Germany and in the US and probably half a dozen different areas and that sort of thing. And they use lots of electricity and lots of water for power and cooling. And that's become a problem. And so it's interesting to think about. What do you think about this? The fact that we don't have enough power for internet and to give people homes.
Wouldn't it make more sense to take some of those businesses or whatever and relocate those to an area where it wasn't competing for home property and electric power?
I suppose, although they tend to build them in places where there is a good infrastructure and backbone, so to connect them all. So the closer they are to each other and to international interconnects, the better. So that it lowers the latency and all that sort of stuff. So, on the one hand, there's a reason they get built close together. It's because there's something there to build them next to.
I'm just looking for an alternative to say you can't have more houses. Well, maybe we should relocate some of the businesses.
Yeah, although then
you got people getting to them, transport. I mean, and travel, commute.
And these are not small buildings; these are massive buildings. Some of these buildings pull as much electricity as a small city. And we've talked about this before on the show about the problem of data centers, and they put data centers out in the U.S. out in remote areas, and those data centers end up taking over the towns. One of the things is we need more electricity, and that's actually a bigger issue, given that there are all these pushes to ban gasoline-powered vehicles, have electric vehicles. In the Boston area, I don't know about other places, there's been this push for municipalities to ban the construction of buildings that use fossil fuels for heating and cooling. In the Northeast, we use heating oil mostly for heating in the winters. And that, again, would mean more electricity for heat. And yet our electrical grid is reaching a limit. So where's all this electricity going to come from? And so there are these questions. Maybe we need to build more nuclear power plants or something else. And maybe that's a thing that maybe the UK needs to start thinking about. Although to build a nuclear power plant, it's like a 15-year process, with all the permitting and all that sort of stuff.
But also tricky. The UK just doesn't have as much land area for those kind of things.
It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't. But yeah. There's, well, in fact, I was recently looking up for Secrets of Doctor Who episode, which they filmed at a nuclear power plant back in the 70s. I was curious whether the plant was still open. And they used to have a lot more nuclear power plants than they have now. And in fact, that's pretty much true around the world. There used to be many more nuclear power plants, and then they've over the years have shut them down and replaced them with oil burning or coal burning plants because of the opposition to them, the people's fears of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, on the other hand, if you want, to go places and have warmth in the winter, we're going to need power. So, but I think there's a justice issue in this, that people need homes, and the people who suffer the most are the people at the lowest end of the economic scale.
For sure.
In order to provide the rest of us with our cloud services, and that sort of thing. It's easy to forget that, when we hit a website or upload a video or, whatever that is, or even listen to a podcast, that all this has to go through servers that exist in a place and that are using resources. So something to keep in mind. All right. Moving on to our next story. This, I really didn't plan this to be a bunch of dystopian stories. I'll take a moment to say next week, Apple's having its big announcement. And so we're going to have a lot of fun talk about new gadgets and stuff. This is not going to be the downer podcast.
Positive, yes.
Yes. So we can talk about fun new gadgets and stuff. But this time we're talking about other things. Amazon announced a deal to buy iRobot, which is the company that makes the Roomba. And people have kind of freaked out about this, where they think, okay, now Amazon is going to have a little robot that runs around your house and collects data on you. Like it'll be mapping your home. And there's all kinds of speculation about what it will do with this information. What do y'all think of this? Is this a real concern? Are you concerned that Amazon's Roomba will map your home for you? And this is the point at which my Echo pipes up and says, no, you shouldn't be concerned at all.
Well, I used to have a Roomba, but because we no longer have carpets and et cetera, we don't anymore. But, to me, it's a very flat linear mapping. It's not trying to map depth. And so it doesn't know whether that's a Samsung 84-inch TV or whether it's something else up on the wall, unless it's really got a highfalutin camera that it's looking at stuff and sending it on. It's just, to me, just linear space.
I'm not really worried. I'm probably never going to have one anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in my house.
But do you worry for your mom and dad or your brothers?
No.
I've never even seriously considered something like this because it would commit suicide within the first day in my house.
All the Legos would just choke it.
It would just like, I mean, it's constant Legos everywhere and all the kids' stuff everywhere. So there's no room for it to move.
What you need to have is two machines. One is the Lego harvester, and the other one is the vacuum. One vacuums, gets the Legos out of the way so it can clean.
If Amazon came out with a Lego harvester, Lego picker-upper, I would tomorrow. Yeah. I would buy it. Yes,
that's what your kids are for, aren't they?
They are the problem, not the solution. Well, I'm the problem because I keep buying them the Lego sets because I'm like, look, it's another Star Wars Lego set. But in any case, I'm not. This feels like, I don't know. You have to be
paranoia.
Yeah, you have to be cautious, just like we were talking about with Facebook, right? And the data. But I feel like people have gotten really paranoid about things in their home. Like the one of the AC techs that I was telling you about, like, I don't have any like high tech stuff in my house, like because I have Nest, thermostat and Nest Protect smoke detectors, and I have Echoes, and he's like, I have none of that stuff because they're recording everything. Like
You're right.
They're not recording everything. Like, yes, the Echo is listening, and there have been cases where the police have tried to subpoena anything that the Echo may have recorded, because occasionally it does, activate and listen for a few seconds and then deactivate. You can actually request all your data from Amazon. You can go, there's a place to go online. I've done this, and you can get everything. It's like, for me, because I've had a long relationship with Amazon for going back over 20 years, maybe 25. It was gigabytes of data, lots and lots of data, but you can go listen to every time it's ever, interacted with your voice, and that sort of stuff. So it's not, you listen to it, it's not listening all the time. And that's the way so much data, they're not capable of sifting through it. So, I don't know. I'm not going to buy a Roomba, but it doesn't concern me if I get that they would do this. It just seems like there are easier ways for these companies to acquire information about you for the marketing purposes than to do all this stuff like, hacking your phone or your Echo or your Roomba to listen or map or all that sort of stuff. They already have a lot of information based on the things we already do, like go shopping and
the buying patterns and the browsing habits. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Amazon already knows. If you shop on Amazon, they know a lot about you already. So I'm not super concerned, but your mileage may vary. And that does it for our headlines this time. So why don't we quickly move on to talking about our picks of the week? And Father Andrew, since it's been a while for you, I'll let you go first. Why don't you give us your pick this week?
And for those of you who know my situation in life, my pick of the week is not going to be surprising at all. I just started a canon law program at the Catholic University of America. So my pick of the week is Microsoft OneNote. And this is actually a program that I've used throughout the majority of my time in seminary, but of course it's part of the Microsoft Office suite, but it's basically a electronic notebook. You can split it into different section, or you can, like, I have a notebook just for like the fall classes, and then you can split your fall classes into different sections, and so those are all my different classes, and then each class has different pages, so you can have a new page for each class and type away on your notes. Or if you have it'd be an iPad or a Windows with a touchscreen. You can actually handwrite with the stylus notes too, if you want in it. So it's really handy for note taking. And of course, I can type faster than I can handwrite stuff. So when the professor's talking, it's easier for me to type away and jot down notes that way. So definitely a handy thing for college students, but high school too, if they're even, I guess, allowed this. I don't even know, I guess, what high schools allow, if they allow laptops or what in the classrooms, but definitely for college and above, it's a great note-taking tool. And it is part of the Office 365 subscription, if you want to do it that way. And I think that's your $70 a year.
69,
personal, for personal use.
Yes.
Students probably get it.
Academics, and academics can get it for less.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you have a .edu email address, usually there's student discounts. So look into that as well.
I think you get it for free.
I think so.
If you have .edu.
I didn't have my EDU address when I
I should have delayed that. Well, next year. I can.
Yep. I can apply for it next year.
Yeah.
Right.
Excellent. Yeah.
I know that you can also use it like for stuff that you've already got into a note, that you could go back and annotate, circle, put arrows in, scribbling stuff on something. It's a good tool for that as well, with a stylus or with a finger. Yeah.
I'm with you, Father. When I was in school 25 something years ago, I was one of the first students at my university who brought a laptop into the classroom and took my notes that way, and got a lot of curious looks. There was one other guy, Bill Curry, if you're listening. Hey, Bill. He and I were both the laptop guys, and we would fight over the outlets because laptops back then had notoriously bad.
And then did everybody come to you for study notes?
Oh yeah. Jeff Cavins, if you know Jeff Cavins of the we and I were in the same classes, and he came in later, but he was also a laptop guy, and he gave me my first digital copy of the Catechism of the Catholic Church in a Word doc. So that goes way back.
Fantastic.
Anyway, a little down memory lane, but OneNote is great. I've never given it a shot. I should. I've been an Evernote user for more than a dozen years or so, and I've loved it. I'm kind of get a little, if I wasn't so invested, I might be tempted to move to something else.
Well, I did try it. I mean, I took all my Evernotes and I imported them into OneNote. And it was early in the development of and maintenance of OneNote, and I had some issues that I couldn't resolve in the way I worked with it. If I had set up something brand new and had my stuff all newly entered, I think it would have been better. But I was trying to use my Evernote structure kind of imposed upon the OneNote structure, and I ran into obstacles.
Yeah. I think what's helpful about it for me too is that it's in the Microsoft ecosystem. Like, I'm already familiar with Microsoft Word because I'm writing papers, and if you're doing PowerPoints or whatever, it flows from one to the other, and you don't have to figure out a new layout for the menu and the buttons, and so for academics it is stellar. Evernote might be a good option, in a non-academic setting. Well,
and Evernote tends to be more expensive too.
It is, and they've really pivoted to as more of a to-do app and that sort of stuff. So it's not really. I've always used it as a sort of a archive or vault for things, but there are other and maybe better things for that. And I use other things for note taking. I like to use Obsidian, which I've talked about before, and some other tools for that sort of stuff. For note take when I'm in meetings, I like to take notes by hand on my iPad using Goodreads, and I know Goodreads is very popular among students in academic settings, so that's another one to to mention there. But I think I might try the OneNote just to see how it goes. We'll see.
Maybe for a particular project that you're working on, not trying to convert everything else. That's what I would do. Is I would say I would use it for one segment of my interest, hobbies, or levels, or whatever. Not everything.
Yeah. So, great. Thank you.
That's great.
So, Pat, what is your pick this week?
Well, I'm always setting up new machines for people, whether it's Macs or PCs or iPads or iPhones or whatever. And these days, almost all the machines are coming with a couple of ports, like a couple of USB-C ports and maybe one USB-A. Or in the Apple world, you get pretty much all USB or the Thunderbolt, the USB-C looking thing. So I found that in most cases, I usually bring an extra hub with me that is a USB-C that has maybe 3 or 4 USB-A ports. Sometimes, if they have a need for it, maybe one that also has an HDMI and a power pass-through, etc. So I just got together a collection of, here's some example USB hubs that I use. Anchor is one of my biggest ones. But I have had some other ones from time to time. But one that was just USB, and it was very inexpensive. But one of them had like USB-C to a USB 2 and a USB 3 port. So I mean, like, you kept the expense down, but you had limited performance. But anyway, there was 4 different hubs that I suggested people might be able to utilize. One of them had Ethernet and HDMI, and you can go on up to $59, $79 for these. But I was trying to look at if you're buying a new machine, what's a nice one to get, just to expand what you can plug in.
Yeah, and with these, I would tend to stay with known names.
Yes,
there are a lot.
That's
of
why I was
names.
suggesting Anchor, or there's a couple of others that have been okay.
Is a name that I recognize.
Sabrent's another good one.
Yeah, There's a lot of knockoff,
no name
brands.
There you could get a lot of electrical damage to your equipment if you choose one that's not very good.
Yeah, in general, anything in which electricity is flowing into my device, I avoid no-name brands on Amazon and other places like that, because I've had too many instances where I remember, what was it? I had something battery powered not too long ago, and it was a spare battery for my Ring cameras, and it started overheating on my desk. I smelled something burning, and I ended up taking it outside, throwing it in a bucket, and filling the bucket with water, which is not safe necessarily, but it was that, or I was afraid it was going to burst into flame.
Right.
So I had put the bucket in the middle of the driveway and I was kind of very nervous about it. And it was a no-name knockoff brand. So from that point on,
I think the only 2 that I recommended was an Anchor and Sabrent. Those are the only 2 I did. There was a lot more on the website, obviously, but
yeah. So if you're looking at Amazon, keep that in mind. Excellent. So my pick this week is a Safari extension. And this works both Mac OS, iOS, iPad OS. It works in Safari across the devices. And what it does is, it's called Vinegar. And what it does is it replaces the YouTube player that in Safari, not in the app. So if you're using the YouTube app, this doesn't apply. But if you use YouTube in the Safari browser, it replaces the usual player with the basic, what's called HTML5 player. It's a more basic video player. It's lower resources. It doesn't require as much resources from the browser. It doesn't eat up as much. It has a few benefits. It prevents YouTube from tracking your play, pause, and seek. I mean, YouTube knows that you're playing that video, but it doesn't know that you've paused the video or moved around within the video. It lets you do picture-in-picture so that you can pop it out of the browser window, including on the iPhone, or the iPad, and it'll sit on top of the other windows or apps, that sort of thing. The videos will keep playing if you switch to another browser tab, so it'll play in the background if you just want the audio. And it removes in-video ads, which to me is the best
biggie.
part. Is so like if I'm watching a 30-minute video and in the middle of a sentence, an ad will start and it's like, oh, and it just interrupts the flow and it's like about something stupid and it's not targeted to me. You don't even see them. There's no blip, no interruption. It's just not there at all. And so it's really great. And it costs $1.99.
Just for the fact that you can hide the browser window and do something else while the video is playing and you're hearing the audio, that's the thing I want.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of things that people put up a video and I just want to hear it.
Yes. I mean, we put all of our shows up on YouTube, most of them as audio only, with a static image, so that you could, some people like to listen to our podcasts in YouTube, which is fine. But this would allow them to have it playing in the background while they're doing other things.
Right.
And the other thing is it's $1.99, but that covers it's a universal purchase. So that means you can, for $1.99, you've got it on your Mac, on your iPad, and on your iPhone. So it goes across all of them. The one downside is it doesn't, like if you're on your iPhone, if it opens the YouTube app, like if you click on a link, it opens the YouTube app, and it doesn't do anything for you there. It won't work inside the YouTube app. So there are ways to circumvent that, to prevent that from happening, so that you can have links open up in the browser instead of. But that's for another pick of the week. So I'll save that one for another time. So excellent.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's good. It's lifesaver. I would be, if I had to give it up, I would be very, very upset. All right. So that's it from us. We would love to hear what you think of our discussion, and you can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology, or our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to technology@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You'll find links from our discussion and picks of the week in our show notes at sqpn.com. Be sure to write a review in Apple Podcasts or one of the podcast directories, and please share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow this community and reach more listeners. We'd like to thank James for his research assistance in this episode, and until next time, Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Absolutely.
Pat Scott, thank you as well.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Technology on StarQuest. StarQuest wants to hear from you. We're conducting a survey of our audience. That's you, to help us in our planning for the future. Please take a moment and visit sqpn.com/survey. We'll be selecting 2 participants to receive an Amazon gift card as an expression of our thanks. So visit sqpn.com/survey today.